Alright everyone, Puerto Rico is going to the polls this weekend. I bet you didn't even hear about this, to vote on whether they want statehood, sovereignty, or to continue the territorial status quo. I'm going to weigh in on this from the title. You probably understand. I support statehood. Some people on the alt-right or the populists, they're like all bent out of shape. They're like, oh no, if we admit Puerto Rico, that's more votes for the Democrats. It'll be solid blue, number one. They're Hispanic, so, you know, more white stuff. You shouldn't be too worried about any of these things. I'm going to go through and just generally rant about the issue. First, to the idea of, oh, well, you know, Hispanic, sort of semi-different culture, a lot of Spanish speakers, whatever. Irrelevant. They're already U.S. citizens. They just happen to be living in a U.S. territory that hasn't achieved statehood. As far as that argument goes, it's nil. It doesn't even matter. There's already free movement to and from Puerto Rico to easily obtain residency anywhere in the United States they want. People from, you know, the other 50 states can go to Puerto Rico and go be there if they want to without restriction. You don't need a visa to travel back and forth to U.S. territory. The same would be true of American Samoa, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Guam. By the way, I don't care if any of them petition for statehood, especially with Guam. I think it would be beneficial. They have enough of a population, not a large land area. They should be admitted. In fact, here's an idea for a compromise. Guam is basically one giant U.S. military base with a bunch of military families on it. Why don't we admit them at the same time to provide a political balance if that's what you're worried about? As to the idea of Puerto Rico automatically being a blue state if admitted, I think you'll find that that's possibly wrong. It may end up being a little bit more like the Cuban population of Florida and leaning towards being Republican in time. But that won't happen if the Republicans look like they're going to be like bigoted towards the Puerto Ricans who are already U.S. citizens and say, no, we don't want to admit them for political reasons. That will give the Democrats a wedge issue down the road specifically to campaign there. Additionally, keep this in mind, Puerto Rico right now is under a great deal of stress because of constant debt problems. They can't make ends meet. This is the perfect situation for the Republicans to admit them and then say, well, you know, we can solve the problems, but we're going to need more fiscal conservatism. By the way, Trump has expressed, unlike past Republicans, willingness to deal with the issue. In fact, this might be the golden time to admit them as a state. Under Obama, I think the Republicans never would have accepted the idea because they're like, well, we don't want Obama to get a new state. And especially since he'll grandstand and it'll look like the Democrats are welcoming them with open arms and we bigot Republicans are trying to step in their way and they get the, you know, Puerto Rico is admitted. And so they grandstand morally on that issue and politically. But now Trump's the president, the Republicans control the House and Senate. My warning to them would be, if the Puerto Ricans, again, for the second time vote in favor of statehood, you should not spurn them. Do not turn it into a partisan issue. They will gain statehood down the road. I'll tell you why in a minute. When that happens, if there's bad blood there, your political party will never be competitive there, unless another paradigm shift completely overhauls the U.S. political system. Now, why will they eventually be admitted as a state regardless? All you have to do is eliminate that which cannot happen. Puerto Ricans in the last referendum voted overwhelmingly in favor of becoming a state. It was more than 60%. Less than 40% voted for the other combined option, which was either territorial status, the status quo basically, or becoming sovereign. There's no will in the Puerto Rican population to become sovereign because it would be such a drastically bad idea that nobody takes the idea seriously. So they're not going to become a sovereign state. The territorial question is why they've got so many problems. Decreasing amounts of support for continuing that status quo exist. That leaves only one option, which is they vote for and obtain statehood. Now, it's up to the U.S. Congress to admit them. They have to hold a vote. My encouragement to the people of Puerto Rico is that if you support statehood, or even if you're kind of on board with it, you need to vote for it and you need to tell everyone else, go to the goddamn polls. The higher the margin is in favor of statehood, it's clear that statehood will win the referendum, just like it won the last one. That's an official prediction. With 99.999% confidence, they vote in favor of statehood as opposed to the status quo. The higher the margin is, the harder it is for Congress to drag their heels. The Democrats will be on board with admission. At least some Republicans will, and Trump has signaled willingness on this issue. What our nation needs, I said this before when they held the last referendum, we need a morale booster. We need it badly as a nation right now because we're undergoing a paradigm shift, and so there are a lot of people on every side that are demoralized. If Trump is willing to admit Puerto Rico as a state, who's going to stand in his way? If he says, yeah, they voted in favor of it, they're Americans, who cares? He'll be killing multiple birds with one stone. I'll probably have to make a separate video on that and exactly why I expect he would support such a move. The idea that they would immediately become a blue state is nonsense. Congress should immediately admit them as the 51st state. And like I said, some sort of referendum should be held in Guam at the same time. You get a lot of military families there. It would presumably be a red state. But like with Alaska and Hawaii, think of it this way. When Alaska was first admitted, they thought it was going to be full of Democrats. Instead, it's one of the most red states in the Union. Hawaii was originally expected, it'll probably be like Republicans, because at the time, remember, they were like small government, not so much into the colonial stuff, and yet they became a solid blue state rather quickly. Puerto Rico might very well become literally like the Cuban enclave in Florida for political purposes. The Republicans are looking a gift horse in the mouth if they openly reject Puerto Rico. They already ignored the last referendum, which was semi-non-binding. This is a true referendum on their status. It would be unwise to challenge it if more than 60% of the people there vote in favor of statehood. The Republicans can instead grandstand and say, oh, this is a great day, American pride. We need a good shot of pride right now. And for those who think, well, Puerto Rico, it's too small to be a state or something, it's the same, almost exactly the same size as Connecticut, with almost exactly the same population, actually, too. We are talking about an island that could very easily become a massive tourist muscle for the United States. And, by the way, there's already free movement. So what does anybody in the country gain from keeping them a territory? Nothing. The Republicans gain a Pyrrhic victory of denying the Democrats what they assume will be a blue state that could swing far red once it becomes a state. They have no way of knowing. Right now it's a territory. Of course they vote in favor of Democrats, who will free up a bit of funding for Puerto Rican development or something, or not lean on them to take care of their debt. Of course they're going to vote for Democrats. But that's going to change. Another thing, another part of this paradigm shift. And people always want to ignore my out there predictions until they realize that they're right. And they're right for a reason. Like with the Hispanic voting bloc in the last election, here you have Trump, supposedly a total bigot, and yet he wins a fairly substantially higher proportion of Hispanic voters than Romney did. Romney, who cast himself as, yeah, I have some Mexican heritage. I love Hispanic people. Illegal immigration is fine with me. Trump actually increases the share of the Hispanic vote. It's a microcosm of a bigger thing, and that share would have been even larger if it had been like Rubio or Cruz or somebody like that. In all honesty, Trump did hold back the Republicans' share of the Hispanic vote. It would have been 5 to 10 points greater if it had been anybody but Trump. Yeah, it would have. It probably would have made them competitive in New Mexico. Wouldn't have helped in the Rust Belt, though. They would have lost the election, but they would have increased that voting share, essentially, and won the popular vote, potentially, as opposed to Trump, who loses it because of all of those Californians pouring out to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's what I think you're going to see in the next election as well. The Hispanics within the United States, I think, are feeling a bit insulted by the fact that the Democrats presume that they love limitless immigration, and as well want to take many refugees that could endanger even the low-wage jobs held by illegal immigrants, honestly. I think it's insulting, and I think increasingly the younger generations, regardless of their race, are leaning away from liberalism, away from open borders and things like that. Puerto Rico should be admitted as a state. It will not necessarily remain blue if it's admitted. You can't solve the problem any other way. We can't let one of our territories utterly collapse. That would be a huge damage to our credibility in the world. It would look bad. It would be bad for people who are U.S. citizens already. So we can't keep... Puerto Rico can't stay a territory forever. The colonial question has to be solved. And because there's no will towards sovereignty, if you asked them, yeah, here's a referendum. Should we become a sovereign nation? 5% of the fucking population votes yes. What do you do after that? Keep them a territory so they get further in debt and just sort of slowly grind down more and more and get overrun by crime and other problems because of it? It'd be a terrible thing. We're ignoring what could become a massive tourist enclave, a perfectly functioning state, probably would end up being a swing state. Everyone would want to wine and dine the Puerto Rican voting base. The Republicans should be competing with the Democrats to admit them faster. You should be doing that while Trump is the president. Here's the key. Do it in the first two. Do it before the midterms if you can. Do it as quickly as possible. Make it look like, yeah, we have no problem with it. Do that. Be a great political issue for the Republicans to win on. The Democrats can't go more pro-minority than they already have. So all the Republicans can do is shoot themselves in the foot by ignoring the issue that has nothing to do with ethnicity. It has to do with a territory that was acquired in the Spanish-American War. Will they or will they not be a U.S. state? They should be. Guam as well should be admitted as quickly as possible into the U.S. as a fully functioning state. In the case of Guam, it's a lot less population, it's a lot smaller. Puerto Rico's more, what you would consider the average state size for something that's truly functioning. And then there's American Samoa and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Those are a totally different boat from Guam as well. But all of them should be admitted. Meanwhile, if you really want a concession, push on the federal level for California to split. So that the large minority of Californians that have zero representation on the state or federal level, basically, can finally have representation. Wouldn't that be an even trade in a political sense? If you are worried about Puerto Rico becoming blue state, why not do that? Then admit Guam, Samoa, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Guam would probably be a Republican state. Puerto Rico may become a Democratic state. Samoa, who knows? U.S. Virgin Islands, essentially looking at a bunch of expat would-bes, based on tourism. Yeah, it'd probably be a red state. Or maybe a swing state, who knows. I mean, it's not like political balance doesn't shift anyway. There were a lot of people. Let me address like the alt-righters or the Republican partisans who say, oh, the Republicans would never win again if Puerto Rico is admitted as a state. A lot of people discounted even the vague possibility that a Republican was going to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin again. And yet Trump won them all. Now, how on earth did he do that? I thought that these states were solidly blue now. You see, political affiliations change over time, and it doesn't have to do with any single demographic shift. It has to do with them all. It also has to do with what issues a party takes up. It's called strategy. It's been happening for a long time. There have been predictions for our entire fucking electoral history as a country that one party or the other was dead, or that a state was lost forever because of some issue that was in vogue at the time. It never actually pans out that those issues remain stable. I think Puerto Rico should be immediately admitted upon holding the referendum, which I can only imagine will go in favor of statehood. The real number to watch is 60. 60 is around the percent that supported statehood the last time around. My hope, my urging to the Puerto Rican people is to vote in massive numbers for statehood. You need to get it higher than that. If you can get it to 65 or 70, it becomes very difficult for Congress to ignore you. My urging to the American people in every other state is to write your senators and congressmen, especially the Republicans, and try to convince them to actually admit them if they vote for that. We need a morale boost as a nation right now. And this is the perfect way to do it. We solve the colonial question, admit a new state. Trump gets to take credit for that because he's coming out early saying, yeah, I have no problem with this. We'll see what happens, and I'd certainly work with these people. It's more than fucking most other Republicans have done. Obama didn't want to talk about the issue either, you remember. The Democrats could lose on this. But everyone wants to pretend that it's a cut and dry issue of a bunch of liberals that want to become a new state. It's far more complicated than that. You can think in those small terms if you wish, but you're wrong. and say, I hate to break it to you, but you're totally politically wrong and don't know what you're talking about. There's no such thing as political stability within the United States. Vermont, my home state, was rock-ribbed Republican up through the Reagan era until the 90s. Now it's solid blue. Now it's kind of moving a little bit back almost towards swing state status because nobody here liked Hillary. They feel shafted by the DNC. The Democrats will be lucky to maintain their stranglehold on this state, I'll tell you that much. And once Bernie's gone, New Hampshire could go red too. Maine's moving back towards being a swing state. Don't count your chickens before they hatch within the political world. You have to go on a cycle-by-cycle basis. And you always have to keep paradigm shifts in mind. You look at the electoral map, you'll know what I'm talking about. That's about all. Peace out.